All right, as we get ready, first be remiss to say just thankful for like our scouts, coaches, trainers, strength staff, everybody that puts into this process each and every year. I mean, it's a lot of time, a lot of man hours, a lot of work, and they work countless hours to get it right. And it's fun. Every year it's fun. It's long, it's hard, but it's fun. We enjoy being together, even through some spirited debate, which is always fun to be around, and when you're making decisions and ranking players. So it's been fun. You know, we're not done yet. Cement's not dry yet, but it'll come dry. You know, it'll dry up by next Thursday when we start drafting players. I was telling Matt walking down here, I think every year, just be remiss not to say something about Therese Paylor. He was a good friend. He was a heck of a writer. This time of year, you know, I always think about, you know, him and our talks. So don't want him to be forgotten, you know, during this time. All right, fire away, chap.
Chris, all the work you've done so far, and still more to do. As you sit here, do you have a pretty good idea how 1, 2, 3 go, or not?
No idea.
Really?
No, and I don't think anybody does. Now, everybody thinks they do. I mean, of course, everybody thinks they do, and everybody has an inside source that's giving them information of what's going to be done. But I think, as you all know, just look at the mock drafts and tell me how accurate they are after the draft. Nobody knows. Nobody's giving out information. Go ahead, Greg.
Does it cause some stress knowing, because you're drafting so high and so important, and it does seem like everything might be on the table for you in those 15 minutes when you're on the clock?
Yeah. No. I mean, look, we do our best like y'all do to dig and try to find out who, but I think we're all guessing. I really do. Now, team need and all that plays into it. And you don't know, like everybody's draft board's a little different. And who we have ranked high, they might not have ranked high. So you don't know that. We're not in those draft rooms. So no, we line them up, and how they fall is how we take them.
What's the more, you guys are talking quarterbacks in the draft room right now. What is the more heated debate? The football flaws you see on the tape, or the mental makeup, because it's such a unique position?
Well, I think it's all important, and I think it comes down to who fits you and what you can work with. And I think that's critical. I mean, and what your coaching staff can work with and what they think they can do with them, how they can build an offense around that player to make him work no matter who it is, doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I mean, you're going to build an offense different for Peyton Manning that you're going to build for Michael Vick. I mean, it's just going to be different. So I think it comes down to who you believe you can build the offense around the best and win games with.
When you have a coach like Shane who's open to working with any style, how do you zero in on what fits you the best if he's kind of open to whatever?
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I mean, that opens that broadens the field for you. And that, you know, that's a good thing. And I think as we've gone through the process of, you know, all the evaluations and coming down to what we think will be best for the Indianapolis Colts, whoever we end up taking is going to be that guy, and he'll make it work.
Chris, how much would you say your opinion has maybe changed on the class since having Shane here for the last 2 months, just listening to him, watching him?
I don't think it's changed my opinion of what I think of the players, maybe on how we would use them, but it hadn't changed my opinion on the player.
Chris, you mentioned that there's so much uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen in front of you. Is it more than other years? Is there greater uncertainty this year because of the scenario?
I don't know. I think back to when we took Quentin at 6, and all of a sudden you had, if you remember, you know, there was a corner that went off the board, 2 quarterbacks went off the board, Barkley went off the board. So, and it wasn't, you know, there's some uncertainty then too. So I think every year, I mean, wherever you're drafting, there's no exact science to know exactly who's going to be there and who's going to be gone. You do your best to figure out get your board lined up the way you see it. It's best for your team, and then you move forward.
You guys scenario that all, right?
Yep.
You prep. So I'm curious into that. Like, have you decided what you're willing to give up if you want to move up to 3, let's just say?
Well, that's saying we want to move up.
I knew this was coming. We won't move back.
At least you won't be sitting. I mean, the good news is at least you won't be sitting around all day till the second round.
I mean, are we sure?
Yeah. I mean, I think you know us well enough. I mean, like, we'll do what we think is best in the moment, whether we think we need to move up or back.
Do you have an idea
Depending.
of what you're willing to part with?
Oh, yeah. You always have
How
a.
far you're willing to go? and
Yeah,
how far you're
absolutely. You always have an idea of both ways. How far you're willing to go up, how far you're willing to go back. You always have an idea. And then the board dictates that too a little bit. Like, all right, so this is a great, I'll never forget when we took Braden and Darius. And we took a lot of criticism for taking both of them. But we had them ranked high. And then I just remember, I remember walking up to the board and telling everybody, like, who's left? It's like, there was nobody left at those positions. I said, this is it. If we don't take these two guys, but there's a scarcity now going forward at the position. So, and they were ranked we had them as highly ranked players. So a little of that plays into it too.
Chris, league-wide, how much lying do you think goes on right now?
Oh, everybody's lying. I might be the most honest, unfortunately. But everybody's lying.
You guys lie?
I think you know Melly well enough. Like, usually if you answer a question, I'll either dance around it or give you an answer. Today I'm a dancer. Today I'm a dancer.
Has there ever been a situation where you've changed your thinking based on something that was said in one of these settings?
In terms of a media session?
Yeah, like outside the normal organizations.
No.
Since a lot of stuff comes out, revelations, true or not, about players late in the process, I've always thought, if any of that's true, you guys probably knew it a long time ago. Does that tend to be true?
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot, and I don't know what people get out of that. Like, there's usually an agenda behind it, but I don't know what people get out of leaking that kind of information. I don't agree with it. That's just me personally.
What we always talk about, like, teams won't trade within their own division. Is that a hard and fast rule around the NFL, or is it?
No, I don't think so. I think if it's the right trade, you do it. If it's the right one for your team, and you do it. I don't have a problem with it.
Chris, the quarterbacks have been lined up, we think, sort of, basically the top two, Young and Stroud. And here in the last week or so, all of a sudden, it's changing a lot. I don't expect you to know what Houston's thinking it too, but is this an example of just there's so much time going on that people just get bored and start saying different things? And is that normal?
Well, what I always find interesting is, like, who's lining them up. You know what I mean? Who's lining them up? And you're not. I don't know I think if you polled 32 teams, you might get 32 different answers of how they would have them lined up. So, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you who we have lined up 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even 5 and 6. I think there's some other players in this draft that are pretty good too. But who's lining them up? They don't have any skin in the game. They don't. It's a little different. They have no skin. It's easy to line them up and be wrong. And then when you're right 1 out of 10 times, you scream at the top of your lungs that I told you so. But no, who's lining them up?
You guys have had a chance to sit down and talk with some of these prospects, the top 30 visits, talk to someone on the phone. Does your evaluation change significantly, or is it just crossing T's and dotting I's, or does it really solidify?
It just confirms, and I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy visiting with these players. Like, a lot of them won't end up here. And even when you at the combine, you enjoy getting to know these young men and their stories and what they've been through and how they've gotten to where they are today, and understanding more about who they are and what makes them tick. And I've always said, like, their resume is their resume, like the tape and what they've done. All this does is confirm kind of what we think we know. But you might dig a little deeper and say, okay, I didn't realize that. That's an interesting point. And we forget these are young men that are still developing, both as players and as human beings and men. They're not. We expect them to be men right away, but they're not. They still got to develop. That's the really cool thing about what we get to do, to watch their careers, follow their careers. Guys that go on other teams. That's a really cool thing to watch. Go ahead, Josh.
You talked about like marrying your philosophy with Shane Steichen's and it kind of being open at the quarterback position, but how much would that bleed into other offensive positions, maybe wide receiver, offensive line, and maybe having you personally look and say, okay, I've done this in the past. Could it change? Could it stay the same?
Yeah, I think like players are players, and fitting in, like I'm, working under Coach Reed in Kansas City to Frank to Shane. I mean, offensive coaches, philosophically, what they want, there might be some little nuances, but they're pretty similar. Most offensive coaches are pretty similar in what they want.
Chris, it's such a big decision for you, the organization. You hear folks say all the time, you got to get this right. What has the process been like for you right now as you head into the next week?
It's been fun. I mean, I enjoy, you enjoy this part. I really enjoy this part of it. I think y'all know me well enough, and I enjoy the digging. It's been fun to be around especially our offensive staff, they're all new, to get to know them. Jim Bob's really talented. It's been fun to be around him, spend time with him, how his mind works, what he sees, how he thinks. Same thing with Shane. It's been an interesting process, and I enjoy that. I don't know. I mean, I think y'all feel the pressure more than I do sometimes. When you do the work, the pressure's not as great as what people make it out to be. Doesn't mean you're always going to be right, but when you put the work in, there's not a lot of angst within you. I don't know if that makes sense to y'all, but that's just, it'd be like, I think we were all in college at some point, and there's at some point when we went to take a college test and we didn't do squat. We didn't prep for it. We didn't do anything. Well, damn right, there's beads of sweat, and you're freaking trying to BS your way through the freaking test and hope you can get a C. Well, but when you've studied for the test, you walk in and you do it, and you do really well.
When you're weighing whether to possibly move up, how much are you looking at the teams behind you? How much of a sense do you have for what that market's like?
Well, of course, you're gauging who might need that position, all right, and weighing who's on the board at the time. There's always this assumption that we've targeted one player. This is the main assumption right now, that we have targeted one guy to go get. I don't know if that's an accurate assumption. Matter of fact, I'd say it's not. And so I think you got to wait till draft. You can't, before the fact, you got to wait till draft day and see how things unfold and then be able to react accordingly.
How many players do you have with first round grades? Can you share?
17.
Is that normal, or is it,
Every year's a little different. Every year's a little different. And that's not saying that the eighth inning player is not going to be good, or second round player is not going to be good. We see that. We've all studied the draft enough to know, and we've seen through the years. But I think every year's a little bit different. Some years there might be 24. Some years there might be 15, and it just depends. I don't know if it's any better or worse than it ever is.
We talked a lot for years about not forcing. I'm not going to pick a guy I don't believe in. And how you don't believe in thinking about what happens if it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. How does that not enter your mind a little bit with this team, with this quarterback carousel, and the stakes of this pick? You have not picked this high since Quentin. There's a lot riding on this pick, whether you're going to admit it or not.
Well, I think there's a lot riding on every first round pick. I mean, I do, and I think any pick in the draft, like every time you're taking a player, there's a lot riding on it, and I think if you create that own anxiety within yourself, then that's when you start to doubt. And that's just not in me. It's just not.
You go back to March, you talk about some of your other moves this offseason. What went into trading Stephon?
I think it was good for both of us. He just at a point in his career he's at the end of his career. Thought he was a decent fit for the defense, but a chance to get a pick for him, in the last year of his deal, shed a little bit of the contract money off. I thought was good for both of us to be able to send him to Dallas, which was a good spot and a good fit defensively for him. That kind of went into it.
With Stephon and Brandon elsewhere, does that make quarterback a need for you to add either in the draft or going forward?
Oh, I think it's always a position that you want to have as many cover guys as you can. But yeah, I mean that's a position we got an eye on both, and we think there's still some free agents out there too that could help us if we need be.
Chris,
Just
I
want to
know the
clarify
city
what
is
you were
making a
saying.
push for the NFL draft. How big would that be for this city if that can happen?
I still don't understand why the city hadn't gotten another Super Bowl. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, has anybody hosted it better than Indy? I mean, really, it was awesome. I mean, we got an unbelievable downtown, great setup, great convention center, great support from everybody within the city. I mean, I think having the draft here would be tremendous. I think it's set up perfect downtown. But I keep asking the question about the Super Bowl too. So what do I know? I think it's a great place for big events.
Chris, does Gardner Minshew's presence, what does Gardner Minshew's presence do for you in terms of flexibility on what kind of quarterback you're willing to? In other words, is Gardner Minshew perhaps going to start this year for 17 games or what?
He's here to compete. Okay, he's here to compete. Here to compete with Sam right now and Nick, who's still on the roster. Those three. But what he does, he has experience, understanding of the offense, understanding of Shane. He's played good football when asked to play good winning football. He's done it. We actually liked him in the draft. Jacksonville ended up taking him. We ended up taking E.J. Speed, and then he ended up going, right behind us in that year's draft. But highly intelligent, highly competitive, very accurate with the football. No, but I'm not lying.
There's a misconception that you've targeted one player. I want to just clarify that a little bit. Are you saying because you don't know what the scenarios are going to be, so you have to prepare for all of them, and then you have a board, which does kind of, you are kind of targeting.
No, and it does, and we'll line them up that way. But I always love to read the reports that the Colts love this guy, and they love this guy, and they're dialed in on this guy. Like, who'd that come from? It didn't come from me. I mean, who's it coming from? Like, who's telling them who we love and who we don't love? Like, they don't know.
Chris, O-line-wise, you guys haven't done a ton in the last month. Feel good about the personnel?
Like to add. Yeah, we'd like to add some depth for sure. Both. We still think there's some players and free agency and in the draft. It's a good O-line draft. Like, I'll tell you, like, I think there's tight ends about as good as I've seen. Like, it is an excellent tight end draft. Secondary, cornerback in particular, really good depth. O-line, I thought was really good. Defensive line, defensive end especially, I thought really good depth in the draft. And players that are going to go in spots that, fourth, fifth round that are going to play and be really productive, good players. Awesome. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.